So let me quickly talk about some things in geomancy. Oftentimes, I found that some people usually say that there are some houses in geomancy that have different meanings. So how do we get to know when to apply, when to talk about a particular meaning of a house rather than the other? If you are familiar with geomancy, you know that what is house 1, house 2, house 3, house 4, and so on and so forth. Taking for instance now, this house 3 is house of war siblings, your siblings. It's also house of war, your neighbors. In Western geomancy, it's also house of war, short distance. Now, you want to do a general reading for somebody. Then you get to this, maybe you have talked about the finance of the person. You have gotten to this house or house 3, which talk about the siblings, the neighbors, short distance journey, and so on and so forth. It is more than that, but for this primary purpose. Then the question is that when you want to interpret this particular thing, when are you supposed to talk about the sibling and not the word neighbors and not the journey, or when are you supposed to refer to this as journey instead of what the neighbors, or when are you supposed to refer to this particular house as siblings instead of the word journey? So that is what I'm trying to explain, that there are some peoples as they tend to ask that each of these house has different meanings. Then when are we supposed to attach one to one for the querent we are divining for? So that is primary purpose of what I want to briefly explain in this video. So there are different ways you can do this particular to determine which one should make reference to that a particular house is talking about from its different meaning. There are different ways you can know which particular meaning a particular house is talking about from its various meaning, because a particular house has different meaning. So how do we know which of the meanings of that house are we supposed to talk about? Now, there are different ways to know it. One of which is that the passing of the figure in that house. We use the method of the passing of the figure. We sometimes use the meaning of that house, the spiritual meaning because if a house has the spiritual meaning and the physical meaning, so we usually use that to determine the meaning a particular house is talking about. Another method to which we use to know which of the meanings a particular house is talking about is the closeness of that house to the subject matter, the closeness of that house to the query the querent is asking about. Let me quickly explain each of the three quickly. First, now this particular house 3 is house of what? Siblings, house of neighbors, house of what? Journey. Now let's talk about then how do we then know which one is this one talking about based on this subject matter that this person is inquiring about, or what the person is inquiring about. Now let's say this house 3 then move to what? House waiting, house 9. Then so automatically talking about among the various meaning of house 1, we are talking this house, this particular chart is talking about distance, talking about journey. That is what we mean by we sometimes use the word the passing of figure to determine the meaning of a particular house. Like we have the different meaning. This one has 3 meaning. So how do we know which one is this one is talking about? Because this house is house of a short distance journey. So we then use the method of the passing of figure. It means to the house 9. So it's talking about this house is talking about a distance journey. Now sometimes we don't use the passing of figure. Sometimes we also use the word and how if each house has the spiritual meaning and the physical meaning. Let me explain. I'll come back to that later. Let me talk about how that particular house relate to the word subject matter. Taking for instance now, a querent is asking about his or her family. A querent is asking about his or her family. Then house 3 will be talking about what? We'll be talking about the siblings, because the subject matter the query person is inquiring about is his family. So among that case, this will be talking about the siblings. You understand? That is another way. Now, the third way to know which meaning a particular house is talking about in relation to what the person is asking about, or what the meaning of a particular house in relation to that subject matter the person is asking about, or because it's not every time you interpret house 3 as house of a short distance for every quadrant. It depends on what the person is asking about. I've explained two methods. The third method is what? The physical or the spiritual meaning of that house. Taking for instance now, this is house 11, sorry, house 9, which is house of journey and house of what? Dreams. Oftentimes, many of our geometrists, they interpret, they call this one out, even though it is house of journey and house of dream. But we don't usually use house of dream. We usually talked about house of what? Dreams. Sorry, we usually use house of what? Journey. So in that case, now to now know, is this house 9 talking about journey or talking about dreams? How do you know? Now, dream is a spiritual case, while journey is a what? Physical case. It means that house 9, we always talk about house of what? Journey, not dreams. Where a querent has a dream, then and he's consulting about dream, then house 9 will talk about what? Dreams. There is what we call botany. There's what we call botany in Eastern geometry. That is things of the world, the inner truth, or in things in the secret world. You understand? So now, if you want to interpret the botany of this particular house 9, then this house 9 become house of a dream. Then how do you know the botany? Now, if you want to interpret the botany of this one, no, this one is Kobdu Daila. That's Kapot Draconi. This is house 9, Kapot Draconi. Now, if you want to interpret this one as of dream, it is not this figure that will judge. It is the figure that is hiding under this figure. There's a way they usually do it. You combine this house together, but just for you to understand what I'm saying, the botany, this is not this figure that you interpret as house of dream. If you want to interpret this house 9 as for house of dream, it is not this particular figure you will interpret. The figure hiding beneath it is what you will use to interpret that dream. Because this house 9 is house of dream and house of journey. But house 9, physically, the way you are seeing, is for journey. Beneath it is the dream. I hope you got it. Some other houses like that too has what? The physical one and what? The spiritual one. The meaning of those out. So that is, to cut the whole story short, that is the simplest way to differentiate between what? To determine which meaning of a particular house applies to the what you are inquiring about. I've told you the three methods. Number one method is what? The passing of the figure. Number two is what? How the subject matter, how that house related to the what? Subject matter, what is you are inquiring about. That is when I use the example of a family. You are inquiring about us, inquiring about your family. Then I'll still we talk about siblings. Do you understand? Then that is method 2. Another method is that what? Look at this, the meaning of that house. Which one is the spiritual meaning? Which one is physical meaning? The physical meaning then comes first before the spiritual meaning. But if what the person is inquiring about is the spiritual part, let's say the person is inquiring about house, inquiring about dream, then you know that it's house 9. But if the person is not inquiring about dream, generally it will be for house of journey. Do you understand? So I hope I'm able to give you a clue or an idea on how to understand this better. And I believe people who already understand geometry will understand this better, because those are the people that already know that each house has different meaning apart from the general meaning that it is. But if you have gotten to that extent that you know that each house has different meaning, then you should be able to understand this as well. So that is that for now. Thank you very much for listening to the video. May God bless you miraculously.